The fascination with serial killers has been around for ages, from the days of Jack the Ripper to the days of Charles Manson and Paul Bernardo. And that is the topic of the day, serial killer thrillers. Hi, I'm Justine and this is Bookends. Today I'm going to chat with Jennifer Hillier about her newest serial killer thriller called Freak. Now, she herself has been obsessed with the topic since she was 15 years old, when Paul Bernardo was on the streets of her own hometown. We're also back at Sleuth of Baker Street today to get a few other recommendations. Let's go on in. I'm joined by Jennifer Hillier, author of the serial killer thriller called Freak. Jennifer, thanks so much for meeting up with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I hear that you first got interested in serial killers when you were 15 because of a specific serial killer in your area. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, there was a boogeyman when I was growing up, and his name was Paul Bernardo. And he was just the scariest thing that we'd ever seen when we were 15. We didn't think that we'd have a serial killer in our area, and he was all over the news, and he was young and handsome, and it's all we talked about. And, you know, his victims were the same age that I was back in high school, so I think that just stayed with me all these years.
So that's also the time that you said that you started reading about serial killers. What is it about them that really fascinates you, that you would go so far?
It's the fact that I think all serial killers, not the ones so much in the movies, but the ones that we read about in the newspaper who do exist, have such a normal public appearance that, you know, when it's discovered, oh, that guy killed 20 people, all his neighbors are like, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe I live next door to somebody who would do that, you know? And that's the fascination. I've always been fascinated by people's public face versus their private face.
What makes a serial killer creepy to you?
The fact that they gain your trust, I think. You know, the fact that when you talk to them, you might not know who they really are. And I think to an extent, we all present the person we want people to see, and then we all have secrets. I think that's just human nature, and their secrets are just so depraved in comparison to everyone else's. And then eventually, you know, their compulsions start taking over their lives, and that's when they start doing those horrible, nasty things, and I've always found it interesting.
You've done a lot of research over the years on various serial killers. Who do you think, you know, would you say has been the creepiest, most fascinating person to you?
Okay, this is sad, but my favorite serial killer is Hannibal Lecter, and he's fictional.
Yep.
But I love him because, you know, as a psychiatrist, right, his whole job was to gain your trust and get you to open up, and I love the way that he was written. You are absolutely creeped out by him. He's beyond redemption, and yet the reader, when they read about him, can't help but like him a little bit because he's so fascinating. And I think that's why, you know, they made so many movies about him, and I think that's why, you know, Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar playing him. That is the epitome of the great fictional serial killer. So he's my favorite.
Which is just cringe factor itself, liking a serial killer, right?
I know, sad.
So then how do you do that? You know, you're talking about real and fictional serial killers there. How do you create a fictional serial killer and a storyline that actually scares a reader? How do you know it's going to scare a reader?
If it scares me, I'm pretty sure it will scare the readers. And I don't mean to sound overly confident, but, you know, you get a little desensitized. Like, I watch Criminal Minds, I watch Law and Order, I watch tons of serial killer movies. And if I can still get creeped out by something, then I think there's a good chance that people who don't, you know, indulge as much as I do in that genre will be creeped out too. So when I sat down to write my first book, you know, I worked in a university for a lot of years, and I thought, a bunch of creepy things happen on campus that we know nothing about. You know, what if that good-looking dude over there, the one who's the assistant, you know, to the professor, what if he was a serial killer? And then it just starts to spiral into, that would be so creepy that he'd be amongst all of these students, all of these co-eds, all of these young women, and nobody would have any idea what he's capable of.
Now, recently, there's been the case of accused killer Luca Magnotta. Now, you know, the courts will decide whether he committed the crime or not. But the fact is that someone out there had committed this crime, had to the student June Lin, had dismembered him, had sent out these body parts. I mean, reading about this case, what are your thoughts on it?
It was absolutely designed to be sensational. It was absolutely for show. You know, the fact that he, you know, killed the guy, the fact that he videotaped, that he uploaded it to some website, that the parts went to all different places, it was absolutely meant to be something that he wanted, or whoever did it, publicized and been made into a big story. And I think it has a lot to do with narcissism and a desire to get your name out there and to be made famous by this. And I think that's why it's so fascinating. And then,
have you thought about that psychologically? I mean, why would someone be that narcissistic if that's what it is?
I think to an extent, a lot of people are narcissistic, and then you couple that with whatever urges that he or whoever did it has to hurt people and to hurt them in such a horrible, gory, gruesome way, and then to sort of immortalize that by filming it. I think it's like the perfect storm of horrible circumstances. Someone who wants to be famous, someone who wants to make a splash, someone who wants to be remembered, and then on top of that, he's a depraved killer. It's going to be a movie, I think.
Well, and you talk about this in one of your blog posts, that if you tried to put this story into a book, that it wouldn't be believable.
It probably wouldn't be. I don't know that I could sell him. If he was my killer, Luca Magnato, and I presented exactly what we think he did or what he's accused of doing, I'd probably get reamed for being like, he would never do that. No one would be so stupid as to film that. No one would be so stupid as to, because it's like, yeah, we couldn't sell it. But truth doesn't have to make sense, right? Like truth.
Yeah. So then does this case change anything for you as a writer in your plot lines?
It does in a way, because, it's hard to shock the reader when so much shocking stuff happens in real life. How do you take your fiction and make it completely fresh? How do you take your fiction and make it something that no one's ever seen before? When you've got Luca Magnotta's and Paul Bernardo's in the news, making splashy headlines, and then keep it believable. How do you sell that? And it's hard. It's definitely challenging.
Does anyone think it's strange, or have you ever thought it's strange that, this topic fascinates you so much?
Everyone who's known me for a really long time is not surprised.
Yeah.
My mom, not surprised one bit. But some of my newer friends, like people I've only known for maybe 7-8 years, that didn't even know that I wanted to be a writer, because I was kind of in the closet about that for a long time, they're horrified. You find out, you tell someone, I'm writing a book, and they're like, oh great, what are you writing about? And they're thinking, oh, she's going to say romance, or she's going to say, a sweeping family saga drama, and then I say, oh, it's a serial killer thriller.
And the reaction?
Why? Why? Like, why, Jennifer? It's like, I have no explanation.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone can explain why they, make the art they do, but it's just something that I think it's a way for me to deal with the fear of that happening. Like when you watch movies like Friday the 13th, I'm not going to be scared of a hockey mask wearing guy that just goes to camp and stabs people, because to me that just seems so far-fetched.
Yep.
But serial killers, they're prevalent, they're everywhere. And that's
realistic.
Yeah, it's realistic, and it scares me. So,
Jennifer, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm now joined by JD, owner of Sleuth of Baker Street. JD, thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. Well, I should correct you, though. I'm part owner.
Part owner of
Marion
Sleuth of Baker
will have
Street.
me by the cojones if I don't mention her name.
So we're talking about serial killer thrillers here today. What makes one of these books good to you or to other readers that you've heard, who come into your shop?
Well, there are two things. There are some people who like the serial killer novel and are quite prepared to put up with anything else about the book. So they like someone who, they like a book with a high body count. They like someone who is, on the surface, looks neat and clean and tidy, but deep down is a psychopath. Someone who has no hesitation about doing whatever he or she wants to do. And that appeals to a lot of people, that thriller element. It's not typically the thing that gets me hot and bothered about what I read. I don't really care if there's a serial killer or not. That's irrelevant to me. I don't care if the body count is low or non-existent. That's fine with me. In fact, I'd rather a novel with fewer dead bodies than more. But the things that appeal to me are the quality of the writing, perhaps a good sense of humor. The location may be, different. Just read a novel recently set in Barcelona, which was fascinating, if for no other reason than this was a great look at a place that I've never been to.
A bit exotic.
But well, sure, anything you haven't been to is, to some extent, exotic.
So you have 3 examples of authors here. Why don't we start with this first one here?
Mo Hayder is a British writer with quite a number of novels to her credit, some police procedurals. Typically they are dark. They're dark novels. The body count can be high, but she writes well. And that will get me to read them, even though I might not otherwise normally pick them up. Some of her novels, like The Birdman, are really quite dark, and I find myself with a book like that putting it down often because I'm disturbed by what I'm reading. And I know it's a good book if I can't leave it down, if I must pick it up again and finish it. Val McDermott, again another British writer, quite a prolific one as well, with series characters and standalones. She's been around for a long time and a lovely woman. But there are some novels, like this one in particular, which can be very dark. Yet again, it's the kind of thing that I'm not always as comfortable with, but once I start one of her novels, I tend to finish them because I just cannot not finish them. And the last one I got, Paul Cleave, is a new writer to me. He's from Christchurch, New Zealand. He's written some 6 or 7 novels, and I've only been introduced to him recently. So the one that I read, called The Cleaner, is a novel that, although it was his first novel published in New Zealand, it is yet to be published in North America. It's coming out in a few months or so. And it is about a man who's a serial killer who pretends to be stupid and ends up working as a cleaner for the police department in Christchurch. So he has access to some information and manages to fool a lot of the people. And his passion, of course, is going out and killing people and watching the police flounder, and perhaps sometimes even manipulating the data so that the evidence, so that the police are at a bit of a loss, feeling superior to the whole thing. It was terrific, and I can't wait for the copies to become available. I think it's later on in December.
Great, JD, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So you can find information on these 3 books as well as Jennifer's book on our website, bookendstv.com.